Let's do a little meditation to begin with. Then bring your attention further inside to your mental consciousness. Subtler object that you have to try to find and hold to see the clear light nature. Try to hold that single-pointedly as you've learned. Let go again and again, even of the imagination you have of the mind, and try to sense something more subtle. The matrix of the mind, which even your provisional mental image is actually embedded within. Within that clarity of mind, recognizing the rebirth that we have, short-lived as it may be, is one of incredible potential to perhaps step out for the first time from our ego and begin considering others like the great saintly beings throughout time have done. We could work for our own happiness this lifetime. That would not become even a dharma, minimally defined dharma aim. We could work for at least the happiness of future lives, restraining our activities our negative activities now, trying to do good, at least with that motivation, or in a higher sense, recognizing that anywhere we're born in cyclic existence in the future, even in the upper realms, there's no real pleasure to be found. It all is impermanent, without essence. And we might strike out to achieve liberation from samsara, nirvana. Even those two goals, those two first Dharma goals, may elude us right now. We may not even be to that level of readiness, of maturation of our mind. But at least to imagine it's possible to go even beyond that. How wonderful it would be if I could develop a mind on the basis of wisdom, recognizing there's no real self, on the basis of the courage and enthusiastic perseverance developed through recognizing the kindness of others, our intimacy with them, to work for their benefit, not just for the benefit of the self. To develop all of the prerequisites, a sense of renunciation of cyclic existence, a warmth toward others, the wisdom to see through our grasping mind. We need to hear the teachings, contemplate on them, meditate, and the root of that is learning how to rely on the spiritual friend. So with the long-term aim of achieving enlightenment for the welfare of others as our goal, I think I'm going to participate tonight in the class, again investigating how to rely on the spiritual friend, how to become a proper receptacle, a proper listener of those teachings. And then bring your attention back to the present. So this is our Lam Rim class, in case you've wandered in off the street. I'm joking. Anyone have any questions? Good, Tom.
On the part about the qualities of the student, I was talking about giving up partisanship. And it said giving up partisanship was to give up believing that your own religious system is the correct one.
That's not the only meaning, but that's one particular. Yeah.
The Lam Rim Chenmo.
Mm-hmm. The Lam Rim Chenmo. He's quoting. Right. As it says in the Lam Rim Chenmo. What does it say? We'll be getting to that a little bit later, but anyway, just quickly.
texts.
Mm-hmm.
It says, first about, it says, not having partisan, non-partisan means not to take sides, and then later on, it says taking sides is to have attachment for your own religious system and hostility toward others.
That's one meaning of it, yeah. That's not the only meaning, because there's many different subtle levels. Even in this text, if you see Geshe Sopa's commentary, at other points when Lama Tsongkhapa talks about the qualities of a listener, of a receptacle for the teachings, being non-partisan, can mean also another way of translating it, because maybe some of you recall a lot of our understanding of these texts depend on how things are translated. So another way of translating that is open-minded. So it doesn't necessarily mean only to be, non-partisan with respect to your religion. That may not be the most important thing. But say, for instance, if the instructor is teaching in a particular way, to be open-minded and not partisan to your own, it has to be this way. At the beginning, it can be, I'm brought up a Christian, so this, having a partisan mind like that might preclude one, or my family practiced Pön or some other native religion of Tibet or something like that. Here it says in that quotation that you're referring to there, it says it is a quotation from Aryadeva's text called the 400 Stanzas of Yogic Activity, which maybe some of you have seen the commentary, a translation of. Here it's translated, in this text it is said that one who is non-partisan, intelligent, and diligent is a vessel for listening to the teachings. Those are the first two lines. In Geshe Sopa's text, it translated this way. So this is non-partisan, intelligent, and diligent, right? Geshe Sopa's translation is a straightforward, wise, and interested listener is called a suitable vessel. Does it sound like a completely different stanza? It depends on how you translate it. So instead of saying non-partisan, here they're saying straightforward. Okay. Well, straightforward, and well, even then you have to check what the real meaning is, because any of these words, you could call it one of Venerable Dreame's, what, did I tell you before? No. Her, the young lady that she stayed with over on the other side of the hill, Stephanie, she was talking about some particular thing, and she said, well, you could call it anything you want. Relationship, marriage between two people. You could call it shu, right? As long as you knew what shu meant. Words are completely, they don't have inherent in them real meaning. It's what we attribute to those words. So sometimes we can get caught up and we think we understand because we learned a word that was translated, but what you have to do is, first of all, go back and study deeply what they mean. Some of you were in Pasadena recently when His Holiness taught, and His Holiness said, I think at least once, maybe twice, he said, these kinds of texts, you have to study even every word. There's very few people who, usually we just read blah, 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 blah. But if you have a chance to, if you can compare the translations, and if you have a little bit of understanding of some of the basic language behind it, say Tibetan in this case, or Sanskrit, you can actually go back and see what the original was, and then you can see the differences in translation. So here, in in the Snow Lion translation, it said, how was it translating? Nonpartisan, and then he explains what nonpartisan means, right?
Venerable, what pages are you looking at?
We're looking in this.
Yeah, what page?
Which book are you looking at? Yeah, this is page 75, 76, 77. Let's see, where was this? Where did you say? Nonpartisan means not to take sides. If you're a partisan, you will be obstructed by your bias and will not recognize good qualities. So here it doesn't even say religious system. Where did you see that where it said about oh yeah, and then later it says taking sides is to have attachment for your own religious system and hostility toward others. So that's a quotation from Bhava Viveka. So there's several different levels of the meaning of that. Here it says in Geshe Zopa's commentary, he's saying, Tsong Khapa elaborates on the meaning of the three attributes of a suitable disciple. The first attribute, a straightforward or honest nature. Sounds much different than just that very limited idea of not being partisan toward your own religious system, right? Taking sides with your own religious system. The first attribute is a straightforward or honest nature, and it is defined as impartiality. If you are partial or prejudiced, you will not be able to see the positive qualities of the spiritual teacher. So here's not just talking about toward a religious system. You will not seek, nor will you understand the meaning of a good teacher's excellent explanations. And then he quotes this text by Bhava Viveka, the heart of the middle way. The mind tormented by partiality will never know peace. That's this quotation. Here it's translated in the other text as saying, through taking sides, the mind is distressed, whereby you will never know peace. The mind tormented by partiality will never know peace. When the mind is obscured by partiality, it can never realize the truth. Without realizing the truth, you can never obtain the peace of emancipation. So then he goes on to say, what is partiality? This is one particular kind of meaning of it. It means being attached to your own system of religious doctrines and feeling anger or hatred toward religions of other systems. That's a sense of one particular meaning of partiality. But here, when we're talking about the quality of the student, it's not just that. It's to be nonpartisan, or as is translated in Geshe-la's text, straightforward. You know? Before you listen to the teachings, you should examine your own mental continuum. If you find this attitude, it should be cast away. So then it goes on to say, in a sutra called the Bodhisattva Vows of Liberation, it says that you should let go of your own desires, preferences, and wishes. This is talking about partiality too. So it's not just partiality toward your own religious system. That's in one context, it can mean that. You should respect and abide in the teachings of your preceptor and Dharma instructor. Okay. Makes some sense? So you have to, I was very inspired by what His Holiness said. You have to go, when you study the great texts, it's worthwhile to try to understand each and every word. Sometimes if you have these texts in front of you, if you study them, sometimes almost you have to do that, and almost the understanding only arises after some time, after you investigate it. So don't be satisfied necessarily with a very quick, superficial, what you think is a quick take. Is that quick take? Quick, what you think is the superficial meaning of something. How about anyone else? Anyone else have a question? Venerable?
I noticed that in relying on the teacher, they talk about the benefits and the faults
at the end of relying on the teacher, whereas like meditation on death and impermanence and how to listen and explain the teachings, they always talk about the faults, you know, thinking about
At
the
the beginning.
benefits, and then at the beginning. So
Uh-huh.
it seems like a bit of an odd order.
Seems like what? Backward
Odd
order?
order.
Odd
Odd
order.
A strange order to think about the benefits at the end.
Strange
Usually we talk about the
order.
beginning. I mean, it's different from the rest. so I
Yes.
just wondered if there's
Well,
a
in
problem.
some presentations, because of this particular subject is not something that we really understand at first. It almost has to be explained first. When you talk about bodhicitta, sometimes in order to encourage people to even think about it, at the very beginning of explaining about bodhicitta, the benefits of developing bodhicitta are mentioned, both for yourself and for the world. You know, in this day and age, you know how few people even think about others, even think about their own welfare, spiritual welfare, let alone think about others. How wonderful it would be if we could preserve that. So talking about kind of the benefits of bodhicitta, and then other benefits, how it purifies negative karma and so forth. The explanation in that context is like when a child is thinking about whether to go to college or something like that, and you might have to, and they're thinking, oh man, I'll just go out and get a job. You know, I won't go to college. I just make some money. It's much more important. Then the mother or father might explain to the child the benefits of getting an education, so that they'd have some enthusiasm to do that. It doesn't, you know, but before you know the subject of guru devotion, you can't, in some cases, you can't really mention the benefits. For some cultures, if they already have an idea of guru devotion, then maybe you can only mention the benefits of properly following the spiritual guide and the defects of not doing so. So it's not set that always you have to say the benefits first. It depends on the context. So, anyone else have any from your study? Michelle, anything? No? Okay. So we'd kind of done last time a little overview of this subject of relying on the spiritual teacher. Actually, this comes before the other outlines of the text, how to lead the disciple on the path. Sometimes if you don't know that, if you don't know how the Lam Rim is structured, if you just see the glance meditations on the Lam Rim, like the foundation of all good qualities, or the glance meditation in Lama Chopa, first there's a verse on guru devotion, and then there's a verse on the preciousness and meaningfulness of the perfect human rebirth, its rarity and so forth, and then going on to other subjects. Whereas here the structure is a little bit different. It's not as though this is on an equal footing. It says, first of all, you have to understand this subject, the reliance on a spiritual guide, the root of the path. Something for you. Did anyone have a thought about that? Is it the reliance that's the root of the path? Or is it the spiritual guide that's the root of the path? Remember I asked you? Tom, did you think about that? Or you're just gonna make an attempt right now?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
You said, is the reliance the root, or is the teacher the root? Was that the question?
Because at first glance, as you look at the sentence, you might think reliance on the spiritual on the guru, the root of the path. What does that mean? The reliance, that act of relying on the guru is the necessary prerequisite, or is it the guru that's the root of the path?
I would say that it's the reliance that's the root.
Ah, okay. Why?
Because the reliance is like the root in the ground, like a tree puts roots in the ground, and the guru is the ground of all good qualities. The found, like nourishment comes up from the ground, it goes up the roots into the tree.
Mm-hmm.
So if I properly rely on a spiritual teacher, I'm like a tree properly relying on the ground or the earth, and then I'm going to get minerals and nutrition and water and stuff.
Okay, that's one. Maybe you could think that the example that's sometimes given in the sutra in the scriptures, the snow mountain like by the sun of devotion, the warmth of that can melt the snow mountain like blessings of the guru, the omniscient mind, which then can descend to your mind and help to sort of irrigate the otherwise dry mind. So, yeah, maybe it's a little bit both. Maybe in reading these texts, if you ask yourself that question, it might be interesting.
Venerable George,
Yes.
I think it's both. You can't have just the reliance from just the teacher. You have to have the reliance on the teacher.
Okay, you have to have both, but which is the root of the path? That was the question.
The
You think?
reliance.
Oh, so you agree with
Reliance
Tom?
on the teacher.
Reliance is the root of the path. Okay.
The foundation of all good qualities, as the translation I've seen says, the foundation of all good qualities is the kind and venerable guru. Correct devotion to him is the root of the path. That's how I've seen it translated. I don't know if that's
So
right.
you have to check back in that. Do you have your Tibetan text with you? You have to check back at the break time and check if that's properly translated. So what did it say again?
The foundation of all good qualities is the kind and venerable guru. Correct devotion to him is the root of the path.
Mhm. So that would seem to imply that
It's the
it's the reliance, the devotion, because they're translating same word,
Devotion. and
devotion, reliance, same. It's the same Tibetan word that can be translated these different ways. So if the guru were the foundation of all good qualities, and
And the correct devotion to him is the root of the path. I clearly see.
foundation of all good qualities, and the reliance is the root of the path. It's a little bit. You have to sort of investigate that a little bit to see what the relationship between the two is. Anyway, let's leave it for a while. Maybe you think about that. It's kind of interesting, I think. Pardon?
You said you're not going to answer.
I don't know. Maybe I tell you too much sometimes. Sometimes I remember Geshe Jamba Tech joke one time when we were translating Pramanavartika. He was thinking of making a commentary, and at one point I said, Geshe, this still, even with your commentary, this verse is not very clear. And he took this aspect of looking very surprised and even wrathful, and he said, if you make it more clear, the people would think they didn't need a commentary. Like they wouldn't think about it. Oftentimes, if you just explain, this is how it is, you just go, oh yeah, that's how it is. You never think about it, and you never.
Yeah.
I mean, all of these points are very, very subtle. Even these, what might seem to be, straightforward points. If you go back later and you think about them, there can be a lot. Okay, so first of all, we were on this first section, as it's translated here, a somewhat elaborate explanation for developing a certain knowledge or certainty or ascertainment. That means for coming to conclude, for making a definite conclusion, a mind which comes to the certainty about this. So, and there's one text by Atisha. It says, one who abides in the lineage of the Mahayana has relied on an excellent teacher. Whereas, and so this is important to see, whereas in Geshe-la's text here, if I have the right page, he says, it translates the same verse. Who's got this book open? Same verse here. I think he translates it in a different tense. The teacher relied on somewhat elaborate. Yeah, right before this. Atisha's. So it says, the person who abides in the lineage should rely on a holy spiritual friend. Here it says, one who abides in the lineage of the Mahayana has relied on an excellent teacher. So this is what I've mentioned many times to you. Sometimes if you only rely on a translation and you're not able to get back to the original, you have to rely on a couple of different translations to try to find out. If you can, with your own knowledge or with the help of Dharma friends with with quotations that seem problematic, to go back and try to figure out what the original is, and then you can get a better understanding. When we talk about the lineage, here it's talking about the Mahayana lineage, but the word Mahayana may not appear in the actual quotation. The person who abides in the lineage should rely on, or here as it says, has relied on. So the point is, in the Prajnaparamita Sutras, it says again and again, someone who is about to enter into the Mahayana and has the capacity to do so, sort of like the instinct to do so. We all have the innate capacity to do so. We all have the Buddha nature within us. Everyone will eventually, from the highest philosophical point of view, enter into the Mahayana. But at any one point, we may not have the karmic tendencies, the interests, and so forth. But if those are ready, and one is aiming to enter into the Mahayana, one of the things that's necessary to do so is, and to bring that to culmination, is a spiritual friend. To rely on the spiritual, the Mahayana spiritual friend. Remember, we call the Gewei Shenyan the spiritual friend, like the word geshe when you talk about the academic degrees. Although that might be used also in a more limited way when you talk about geshe. Have you heard that before? Have you mentioned before, Michelle? Geshe. Mm-hmm. So, and then in another text, Podawa is one of the great Kadampa Geshes. He said in one of his texts, of all the personal instructions, this one is the prime instruction. Do not give up the excellent teacher. Of all the personal instructions, quote, do not give up the excellent teacher is the prime instruction. So in the other text that we're using here, he says, the starting point of all the special instructions is this: don't let go of your holy spiritual friend. He says, don't give up, don't let go. So again, it gives you some food for thought, what's actually meant here. Many times the Lamas say, His Holiness says sometimes, proper disciple, excellent teacher, enlightenment can be molded like clay in the hand. You know, if you have a proper instructor and you are a proper receptacle of teachings, easy. Most of the time we don't have one or the other or both, or neither, I should say. And you have to rely on a teacher for a long time. I think nowadays, as kind of this expectation to do everything very, very quickly, right? And maybe if the teacher doesn't satisfy you very quickly, you might think, there's no need to rely on them. But one needs to rely. If you found a spiritual friend that has the qualities that are the best that you can find, and you have a karmic connection with, you have to rely on them for a long time. Years, maybe decades. Our minds are so egoistic, and one of the reasons for relying on the spiritual friend is to help to overcome our ego. That's one of the aspects of relying on the spiritual friend. Sometimes in some spiritual traditions, almost the sense of reliance is surrender. Have you ever seen something like that? In the Hindu tradition. Have you heard Ashok sometime in the Hindu tradition, almost like the sense of surrendering? letting go of one's own predispositions and so forth.
They mentioned that. They say something very similar.
Very similar in here also. So I think might have been Frank had asked a very good question before, like, you know, I'm not just ready to just surrender myself to any Yahoo. He didn't say that, but, you know, how are you going to know they're not going to mess you around, you know? So yet that's why you have to check. That's why you have to check. But
Isn't that also why you have to really investigate the teacher first?
yeah, that's what I mean by check. You have to check the guru, investigate, and yeah. Our tendency in the West is to have over-expectation at the beginning, thinking someone is the guru, quote unquote, and then putting them up, first of all, putting them up on an artificial pedestal, only to knock them down very quickly because they don't meet our presupposed criteria, perfection. You know, oh, they blow their nose, you know, or they made mistake. They didn't make me happy. They scolded someone or whatever, you know. This has to do with partiality also, Tom. You know, having a preconceived idea what things are going to be.
Wonderful.
Yes.
I'm a little confused about the possible contradiction between that and the concept that's described on page 90 about the difficult points from the black enemy of Yama.
The
Someone who hears-
black enemy of Yama. What's that?
It says, someone who hears even a single verse and does not conceive of its speaker to be his or her guru will be reborn 100 times as a dog and then will take rebirth in a bad cast.
Bad case. Bad case scenario. Hmm. Yeah. This is a very famous quotation. So I mentioned this at least once before, maybe I've mentioned before also. That quotation is when the Lamas explain what it is referring to is once you've checked, hopefully checked, but once you've thought of someone as being your guru from the depth of your heart, and on the basis of that, you've heard one verse of Dharma from them, that's kind of like this, you know, not only just seeing them, say, okay, now that's my guru, but then actually receiving a verse of Dharma from them. At that point, the karmic connection with them is very, very powerful. They can, both positive and negative. So if at that point, if you give up, you know, if you disparage them and so forth.
You had to meet a conscious assent to this person as your guru.
Yeah, it's just like, for instance, you just say you just walk into some auditorium, someone says, oh, someone's giving a lecture, and you sit down and you listen, and afterwards they said, oh, he or she's your guru now. You heard one verse of Dharma from them. You know, oh my gosh, I didn't even, that would not be the case. In fact, there are degrees of how much we actually assent to the guru, see someone as our guru. So obviously the karma becomes heavier and heavier. But say, for instance, if you've taken someone as your tantric guru, in that case, it's not so much that you, once you've received a tantric initiation from someone, a tantric empowerment, it's not so much that you have this option of whether, I took the tantric empowerment, but I'm not really going to consider them my guru. You can't do that. Once you've taken the empowerment, you actually consciously decided to take the empowerment. Whether you knew it or not, they become that same kind of level of heaviness. So it's that's very, very crucial. So to be able to practice Tantra, and to be able to encounter real manifestations, more obvious manifestations of Buddhism in the future, we practice now. How does one get to the point like Lama Zopa Rinpoche or other great beings who see all of their gurus as perfect? Did they just, this lifetime they just decided, okay, I'm going to do that? It may have been something that took place over many, many lifetimes. And the karma at first is not to have the karma to be in the presence of obviously perfect being. Maybe the Buddha appears in a very ordinary form at first, and that ordinary form gives you a lot of grist for the mill, because you have to try to recognize what look to be faults to be actual qualities. So this statement, you think, I want to succeed and not to fail. And you look back, all of the great beings of the past in the Buddhist tradition, at least as we see in the Indian and Tibetan tradition. I can't say for sure with the Zen or other traditions, but I think the teacher is very, very important in those traditions also. They have these stories of crazy Zen gurus beating the students and things like that, right? Theravada, a little bit different because it's not entering into the Mahayana path. There, one tries to see one's guru according to the Vinaya, according to the discipline, as like the Buddha, as representing the Buddha. But in the Mahayana and then in Tantra, becoming more and more, try to see them as actual emanation of the Buddha. They are the ones that are leading. Even if someone glorious and everyone said, oh, Maitreya's there giving teachings, would they be teaching anything differently? It's interesting. Sometimes if you go to His Holiness the Dalai Lama's teachings, some people with a very partial mind or critical mind, I've heard people come out, even some present scholars of Buddhism, they've come out afterwards and said, oh, he didn't say anything new. I'd heard all that before. Almost like having some expectation. And sometimes to see that, if even His Holiness might appear that way to some people, even if the Buddha is appearing, would they be teaching anything in any way different than the spiritual guide that we do have connection with? So let's speed through here. There's a lot of things because again, the course is not on the Lam Rim Chenmo, so we really shouldn't be going through all of this. But this might be worth for some of you to who have not heard this kind of stuff before. So then we get to, under this somewhat elaborate explanation, there are a couple of outlines. So one, the defining characteristics of the teacher to be relied on. So this is very useful to know. That one of the sets of qualities comes from the Mahayana Sutra Alamkara. Have you heard of that, Peter? Mahayana Sutra Alamkara? Alamkara is the text, one of the 5 texts of Maitreya, that Maitreya taught to a Sangha. And in that there's as is translated here, let's see, we could read both translations. Here it says, rely on a Mahayana teacher who is disciplined, serene, thoroughly pacified. So what's that referring? Those are the first 3 qualities. What are those referring to? The 3 higher trainings. Disciplined through the practice of adhering to the vows. The mind is and body and speech are disciplined. The mind is serene, as in tranquil abiding, through the higher practice of concentration, and thoroughly pacified through the higher practice of wisdom. So in perfect kind of teacher would have a meditative concentration, not just samadhi, but a union of vipassana and shamatha, understanding emptiness. So their mind is thoroughly pacified. Rely on a Mahayana teacher who has good qualities surpassing those of the students. So the teacher, you shouldn't rely on a teacher in general that is has far inferior knowledge to oneself. Because if you rely on someone with less knowledge than yourself, your qualities can actually degenerate. You can read all of the reasons for this. You should rely on someone who is energetic, has a wealth of scriptural knowledge. So not someone who knows just one small text or something like that, someone who is well versed in the Buddhist teachings, possesses loving concern for the disciples, has thorough knowledge, and as Diana had mentioned before, there's a difference, slight difference between this and thoroughly pacified. Here it's talking about can be up to a direct realization of emptiness of phenomena, and is skilled in instructing the disciples. So someone who is, ideal teacher is someone who is skillful in giving teachings, and someone who's given up being discouraged, abandoned dispiritedness, as it's translated there. Is the whole verse actually translated here? Let's see. Yeah. You gotta help me out, guys. Which page here? Does it have the whole quotation directly here? Points out so Geshe doesn't give the whole quotation immediately here. He just breaks it up. One point he mentions relying on an inferior person. There's a quotation from verses about friends. Relying on an inferior person, so someone with less qualities than yourself, people will degenerate. Relying on one who is equal, they'll stay the same. Relying on the superior, they will attain holiness. Therefore, you should rely on one who is superior to oneself. So these are the famous qualities. So ideally, if you were to go just by these, you would try to seek out a Mahayana teacher. Are there any teachers like that today that have all of these qualities? Can you tell if they've realized emptiness? Can you tell? You can tell. Lisa? You can tell?
If they realized emptiness, I don't know about that.
But you can tell the other ones.
The other ones, I think so.
Yeah?
Yeah.
How could you tell if they have tranquil abiding, if their mind is serene due to the practice of concentration?
From listening to them, checking them out, being with them.
A couple days,
Yeah,
20 minutes.
yeah, 2 minutes. No.
2 minutes, you know for sure, right? You might have to check for a long time to see. So the ideal teacher would be someone who is actually, their mind is already quite pacified through the practice of keeping their vows, all of the various vows. They have a practice of concentration within which they can get rid of all of the discursive thoughts, and their mind can be more pacified, serene here, and thoroughly pacified through a deeper kind of understanding. So if you, say for instance, if you develop concentration, remember what happens if you develop the first concentration? The first concentration of the form realm? You separate from the desires, the attachment of the desire realm. So you're completely peaceful. Then all of the, even you put gold or temptations or worrisome things in front of the person, while their concentration has not degenerated, doesn't mean they're in concentration, but while the power of that concentration still abides, they're separated from attachment to the desire realm, and their mind is very, very calm. But it's not thoroughly pacified by understanding the ultimate nature of reality. It's only kind of separated from attachment. That's kind of the differentiation between those. Other texts and other quotations mention other qualities. So we see a little further on some other lists. What's it say here? Okay, so the following 6 qualities, and this is on page 73. These 6 qualities, third line down, being disciplined, serene, thoroughly pacified. Those are the first 3 of the 10, right? Having good qualities that surpass those of the students, wealth of knowledge from studying many scriptures, and thorough knowledge of reality. So 6 out of the 10. These are qualities obtained for oneself. The remaining qualities, being energetic, having skill in instruction, possessing loving concern, and abandoning discouragement or dispiritedness, are qualities for looking after others. Among the 4 qualities of looking after others, oh no, here, let's jump down to the bottom here. It says, Potawa, one of the great Kadampa Geshis, they're pronouncing it, they're putting it as sometimes is pronounced Bodawa, but you may see it Potowa, sometimes Potawa. These 5 qualities, loving concern, knowledge of reality, and the 3 trainings, are foremost. Okay, so on one hand, loving concern, which is related also with great compassion. Okay, if you have great love, you also have great compassion. So, love for the students, concern for them, and knowledge of reality, along with the 3 trainings, are foremost. And Potawa said, my master, Shang Tsung, is not very learned with regard to all the scriptures and cannot withstand dispiriting circumstances. Gets fed up very easily, right? Too many flies, too hot, whatever. Therefore, he does not even thank those who help him. However, since he has these 5 qualities, he is helpful to whomever is in his presence. So he mentions other lamas that have some of the qualities. In the King of Concentration Sutra, the Samadhi Raja Sutra says, in later times there will be many monks without vows, wanting to say, I am learned. They will praise ethical discipline, but will not strive diligently at their own ethical discipline. So just someone who is called a monk or someone who praises ethics, that's not the distinguishing characteristic of having the mind pacified by the practice of ethics. You have to check very carefully. We have a minute or 2 more? Yes. You have to give me a 5-minute warning or something.
We have 7.
7-minute warning. Okay, good. That's good.
Maybe 6.
Maybe 6. Okay.
5 now.
Now 5. Let's see here. Oh, okay, so a question comes. Because this is a degenerate time, it is difficult to find a teacher who has these good qualities in their entirety. Therefore, what should we do if we don't find such a teacher? Just give up or just wait? So the answer, in the Tantra requested by Sabahu, it states 16 qualities. So you thought 10 were bad. Now it's talking about 16 in a degenerate time. So it sounds like more, but maybe some of them are not as difficult to find. Just as a chariot with one wheel will not go down the path even though it has a horse, so too without assistance for meditation, people will not gain attainments. These assistants should have intelligence, a good appearance, great purity, be of reputable lineage, and incline toward the teachings. They should have great confidence, perseverance, and have disciplined the senses. They should speak pleasantly, be generous and compassionate, forbear hunger, thirst, and the afflictions, and not worship other deities and Brahmins. They should be focused, adept, grateful, those 2 are together apparently, and have faith in the 3 jewels. When Trudon Rinpoche taught, he divided them up that way. Maybe in Geshe Sopa's commentary also. So these are also, Atisha said that the guru should have the same kind of qualities. So let's see if we can summarize. Basically, as Lama Sopa Rinpoche says many times, one of the most important qualities in this day and age is that the guru mainly be thinking about future lifetimes rather than implying that you're going to make immediate kind of success and samsaric happiness this lifetime. they should have, their main motivation should be out of compassion. They shouldn't be thinking of their own fame and reputation and service that the disciples might supply. When I was in Russia, the Russian Republic, some years ago, I went down to the Ukraine, and we were in, I think we're in Donetsk. Donetsk, is that how you pronounce it? Coal mining town. And my translator took me to see a guru that lived by. There was a young guy, and he had big. He looked very Russian, big black beard. Looked a little bit like Rasputin, maybe. Big black beard, wore a black, like Tibetans wear chuba coat, and all of his students. He has students that he was teaching, although he didn't know very much. You know, when I would ask him about the teachings. And the students would come in and they would make 3 prostrations and they would bring him his tea, and just like it's like in the past in India and Tibet and so forth, except maybe, I'm not sure, almost I got the impression that this was something that had evolved culturally, and there was a certain kind of expectation and a certain attachment on the part of the teacher. It might have just been my projection. So you should find a teacher whose concern is about future lives, leading you to watch your karma, to think about future lifetimes at least, let alone liberation and bodhicitta. Someone whose concern is not for their own fame and reputation, but who's acting out of compassion. Someone who has some ability in the 3 trainings, who's somewhat subdued by them, and has an understanding, correct understanding of emptiness. Should we take a break? Cogitate about this for a while?
We have a new student,
music, right?
George.
Hmm?
We have a new student.
Oh,
The 8-legged one.
hi. Oh. A spider.
Ah, he likes you.
In Toronto, it was a huge cavernous building. There was like at least 3 or 4 birds. They could fly around the whole time.
Oh yeah? That happens, yeah. Sometimes in the temple in Dharamsala, there are birds that come in. Okay.
Venerable,
Yes, got a question?
this thing we just covered with the 16 qualities,
Mhm.
I noticed that they refer to it as assistants as opposed to teaching. Are these,
Well, later on it says that Tisha said the same holds for gurus, right?
yeah, what I mean in this particular thing, are they referring to, it follows the line of what if we can't find a teacher that has these qualities, then we've got these,
Uh-huh.
is this more like Dharma friends or?
I don't know the actual context of the, what it says in this particular tantra, but it's Atisha took it to be referring also to the spiritual guide. So that's something you can kind of do some research. Let's see, does Geshe-la here?
So he's referring to the last paragraph where it says mantra practitioners should rely on an assistant who has 1/2, 1/4, or 1/8 of these
Yeah.
qualities. So
Mhm.
I think assistant means guru in this.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's there. I didn't look at the Tibetan for this to know what the word for what they're saying assistant is. It might be Yongzin, which they might be translating that way. Let's just take a look. Does Geshe-la mention that here?
Well, it says in that paragraph, it also.
I'm talking about.
Same with respect to the guru.
Yeah, we've mentioned that. I'll just see. This is Tantra Sabu. Okay, here we go. So on page 113, we've got the quotation about the. Okay, yeah, here. Just as a chariot with only one wheel will not move on the road. We've got the first part of that. Likewise, people without a friend to support their practice. So here it said assistant, right? I'm not sure what the Tibetan is. I'll take a look if I can next time. It might be Shenyan, might be Nyemba, Nyembo, or Shepa, all of which mean friend, but kind of the sense of spiritual friend. So remember when we talked about Gewe Shenyan or Kalya Mitra, it doesn't mean just as, one of your buddies. It means someone who you can rely on and have that kind of relationship with. Reliance on the spiritual friend. It usually doesn't say reliance. Sometimes it says Lama La Tenpa, reliance on the Guru or devotion to the Guru. Sometimes it says Shenyan, spiritual friend, reliance on the spiritual friend. So it could be referring to the Guru. Because it says, Geshe-la says, you should rely on someone with these qualities when you cannot find a spiritual teacher with the highest qualifications I described earlier. However, it is very rare to find someone who possesses these qualities in such degenerate times as the present. Okay. So let's go on. Now the next section is talking about the qualities of the disciple. So we are disciples, right? So you might say, well, what's the point of talking about the qualities of the disciple? Does that mean you either have them or you don't? If you don't have them,
You're out.
you're out? What do you think, Pete? What do you
I
think?
think it rather than prerequisites, I think it more means the kind of an innate quality that you need to bring to being a student.
Well, all of these things is that sometimes we may not have these qualities right now, or they might not be accentuated. They may not be to any special degree. So understanding this, and you recognize that in order to be a proper receptacle, you need to have these qualities, then you can strive to try to develop them. Okay? So, what did we say here? It is said that one who is nonpartisan, or as if we took a translation from the other text, someone who was, what did we say? Straightforward, wise, interested listener. So this is a famous quotation. You might actually, those of you who want to study these things in depth, you might take the several different translations and put them next to one another. You can find this also translated probably in translation of Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand and other Lam Rims. Those of you who know Tibetan, you can ask my help, or if you know how to find it in the text, you can look up this quotation and write down the Tibetan, and then look at each of those words. Like His Holiness said in Pasadena, it's incredibly useful to study even every word. Maybe even the commas, like in Tibetan, dang between can mean and or comma, so sometimes, maybe even that, even sometimes. But here, you could just see the difference in translation between these two. Does it sound different to you? Nonpartisan, intelligent, and diligent. Straightforward, wise, and interested. Mm-hmm. Interested doesn't sound so much like diligent, does it? Until if you check on the Tibetan word, donyer. Donyer, dondu nyerpa means to strive after a particular goal. So in that sense, that means someone who is an interested listener, someone who's got an aim in listening. Or, as it says here, diligent. Diligent, maybe I would say, is a little bit loose translation of that. Doesn't give exact. Michelle?
So I want to know, since I don't speak anything but English,
I don't know.
I want to know who you defer to for translation.
I think of these two texts, I think in general, the translations in Geshe Zopa's text have been honed.
Okay.
It's not as though Geshe-la said each of these words, but they're based on his commentary, which sometimes goes deeper into the meaning of the words. Mm-hmm. So in general, I would defer to that. But I was saying, those of you who want to study and get really deeper meaning, put a couple of different translations side by side and look at them, try to see the differences and study them. And if you have chance to study with someone who knows Tibetan, then you can ask them to explain what the Tibetan words are. That way you can kind of understand better what these things mean. Otherwise, like for instance, in the first qualities of the Guru, when it talked about the 10 qualities, the second and third in Tibetan is Shiva and Newar Shiva. Sounds like almost, Shiva means pacified. How did they translate the second one? Serene. Shiva, like Shine. And so you could translate it many ways. Calm, peaceful, pacified. Newar Shiva, Newar means is a, in Tibetan, is a modifying particle that intensifies, so extremely pacified, or they said thoroughly pacified. But the same root word there, so you can kind of get an idea. There's some relationship. There's a certain amount of pacification that's due to concentration, but that's, you're not really thoroughly pacifying the delusions. There's the roots of the delusions, the seeds of them are still there. It's only when you can start to have a wisdom that realizes emptiness that you can, your mind can be more thoroughly pacified. Yeah, that, okay. So, Lama Tsongkhapa, so what do you think? Are you straightforward, nonpartisan, open-minded? Different ways we could translate that. What do you think, Venerable? You open-minded?
Slowly you try, you know.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe a wee bit more open-minded.
So you have to check yourself. You have to check yourself. What does that mean? Am I, do I have preconceptions? Am I partisan to my own point of view? And so whatever the Guru says is sort of like, well, that doesn't fit with my ideas. So the ideal disciple, like I remember I told you, His Holiness says many times, I think it comes from quotation, I don't know the exact quotation, something like, a qualified disciple, perfect Guru, you can, you can mold, it's like molding enlightenment in your hand, so easy. So it's not just enough. You might think, oh, I found, Lama Sopa Rinpoche, I found Ribo Rinpoche, I found Truden Rinpoche, I found Kirti Sanchab Rinpoche, perfect teacher. Now, everything's okay. You have to actually work on and develop the qualities to be a proper vessel, recipient for the teachings. Get rid of the, it's not just, there is a relationship, if you check in Geshe Zopa's commentary, when it talks about, there are several places when it talks about the 3 faults of the vessel, remember?
Yeah.
Having a dirty vessel or a vessel with a hole in the bottom, or what, inverted vessel. At the very beginning of the text, when it talks about the praises, the homage, the author's homage, Lama Tsongkhapa's homage, there's an implication there about the listener, the 3 faults, related with these qualities. So the 3 faults are a little bit different than these qualities, right? Also later, right here, Lama Tsongkhapa talks about some other qualities and puts them in a different kind of, how do you say, different kind of order of importance. So he says, so this means the impartiality, let's say, or to be open-mindedness. Is that one characteristic enough? I'm reading on page 76. Reply, though nonpartisan or open-minded, because this is just another way of translating it, if you do not have the mental force to distinguish between correct paths of good explanation and counterfeit paths of false explanation, you're not fit to listen to the teachings. Therefore, you must have intelligence that understands both of these. By this account, you will give up what is unproductive and then adopt what is productive. So you need to have some intelligence. I remember Geshe Nawandarge saying, I think it must come in a quotation also, saying that if it's students are very open-minded, wants to listen, they might even have some kind of diligence, but if they're not intelligent, it's like talking to the wall. No one reacts to that. It's a little bit like talking to the wall there. Okay, not joking. A little bit like that sometimes. The guru says something and you just you can't differentiate what is being said or what's right and what's wrong, what is to be practiced. Maybe you might think, Tony Robbins. You know who Tony Robbins is? Anthony Robbins?
Big teeth.
Big teeth.
Was it?
Big teeth.
Big Teeth, Mr. Big Teeth? You don't know who Tony Robbins is?
Self-help kind of teacher.
The big guy with big teeth,
Big teeth.
and often has commercials late at night, and has seminars where people come and pay thousands of dollars. He's not the only one, there's but a very, very popular one on TV. Self-confidence and everything. You might think, he's my guru. I mean, you might, And, so the intelligence would refer to recognizing also, in that case, whether what they're teaching you is actually something that's going to be beneficial for you in your spiritual path, or if it's just something that's going to aid you, get a better job or find the friends, the confidence to ask out the boy or girl you've always been afraid to ask out, or whatever kind of things they're talking about. So are just these two enough? So open-mindedness and intelligence. To reply, though having both of these, it is like a drawing of a person who is listening to the teachings. If, like drawing a person who is listening to the teachings, you are inactive, you are not fit to listen to the teachings. Therefore, you must have great diligence. Or, as in Geshe Sopa's translation, they said, interest or striving. Donju Nyarpa means to strive. So, I don't know, diligence, striving, interest. By using those different words, you can start to get a little bit of an idea. Sometimes the way the commentary is translated also, because they keep on translating the main word the same way, just reading the commentary may not make it any clearer. That's why sometimes it's useful to read different translations. Chandrakirti's commentary, Chandrakirti, the great Indian scholar, pundit, says, after adding the three qualities of the student to the two qualities of being focused and having respect for the teaching and instructor, there's a total of 5 qualities. And then Lama Tsongkhapa sort of condenses that down also. So it's worth sort of looking at these different presentations and seeing whether you have these qualities and how to become a better listener to the teachings. So then the third main outline is how the student relies on the teacher. The Tibetan text, sort of cute. It says, how that relies on that. It's a map. Yeah, we need a map. So if you, in your Tibetan thing, it's just where page 3A turned out. It says, de, jita tempe su la ni. So how that relies on that. It's relying. Yeah. It's kind of, here it's in the text they're actually adding some words so you can understand. Otherwise you say how that relies on that. How the student relies on the teacher. So, how the student relies on the teacher basically has 2 outlines. How to rely in. This is also you find in Lama Chopa, the Guru Puja, in the section on Guru devotion, all through the texts. There's a very famous this kind of division right now. How to rely in thought and how to rely in practice. Or in action. Have you heard that before? Reliance in thought and reliance in action? So how in practice, how do you devote yourself to the Guru? One way is in contemplation, in thought, The other way is in your physical manifestation. So for instance, in thought, it would mean training one's mind in faith and appreciation for the Guru, to try to develop that kind of faith that the Guru is a manifestation of Buddha, and to remember their kindness, to develop a warmth toward them. Those are the principal ways of doing that. And then in action, have you heard of the text of 50 verses of Guru devotion, Venerable? Mm-hmm. Have you heard? Okay, 50 verses of Guru. So that's a text that's usually given in preparation for tantric empowerments, that tells how to comport oneself, how to behave with respect to the Guru. Not to walk in front of them, not to dispute with them, and not to fight with them, and to make offerings and all this sort of stuff. And so this is the section that we're getting to. So this is like the main, the practice of Guru devotion. The other parts are how to develop the thought, how it's possible. We kind of mentioned that the first time, how it's possible, because even in the daytime, you don't see the stars because the brightness of the sun. So if you focus on the qualities of the Guru, any things that are faults within their continuum or their behavior can become kind of unnoticed to you. Just like we notice our own qualities, or those that we love, we think of their qualities, we don't think of their faults so much. Maybe some of us do, we think of their faults also. Yeah. And then, so how it's possible, why it's necessary. You want to succeed, you don't want to fail. And then knowing that you have to find a Guru in order to do this, in order to really succeed, you need to find a Guru who has the right qualities. They have to know more than you. They have to have the right motivation. They have to have some wisdom. They have to be disciplined in the Buddha's teachings. Once you settle that and you recognize that there's certain qualities from your own side as a disciple, as a student, that you have to cultivate, as we say, open-mindedness and diligence and so forth, then how do you do it? So now we get to that actual section. So first of all is a general indication of the attitudes necessary to rely on the spiritual teacher. So this is the first outline in how to rely in thought. So a general indication of the attitudes necessary to rely on the teacher. So the Gandavyuha Sutra, very famous sutra that they translate here, Array of Stalks Sutra, one of the large Mahayana sutras, states that you should have respect and serve the teacher with 9 attitudes. This includes the key points of all the attitudes that you should have in order to rely on the teacher. If these are further condensed, 4 attitudes remain. So, have you heard this before? This is one of Lama Zopa Rinpoche's sort of favorite topics. You've heard before?
Recently.
Recently? Yeah, like what, yesterday?
Well, I was studying, and actually Diana showed it to me.
Mm-hmm. I think sometimes there's a poster, I think, that Rinpoche had printed up some years ago with the 9 attitudes. It's something that the Kadampa Geshe has talked very much about also. But it's not just someone's own idea, it comes from the sutras. So the attitude in which one is like a dutiful child. So here, when we're talking about surrender or whatever we were talking about before, as the text here says, this means to give up your independence and submit to your Guru's will. That's difficult for us, isn't it?
So un-American.
That's so un-American. That's very, it's very un-Californian, I think.
Impossible.
Maybe some parts of the country is a little easier, but it's definitely difficult for Californians. The attitude like a diamond. I'm not sure if it's actually diamond or if it's Vajra. Vajra. Here they translate, in this text they translate diamond. Vajra doesn't always mean diamond, does it? Do you know what Vajra is, Peter?
I assumed well.
Did you think it meant diamond?
It's more the quality than the diamond itself, the quality of the word is adamantine, but or
Vajra, I'm not sure if there was an origin before the legends in the Vedic texts, but one of the gods was sort of humbled by some of the others and needed a weapon that was indestructible. So he took the ribs of one human who had died, great Mahasiddha of their tradition, and the shape of the ribs and so forth, Indra fashioned a weapon that's called the Vajra. It doesn't mean thunderbolt. Sometimes Indra is associated with the thunder, so sometimes people translate it as thunderbolt. It isn't, it kind of can imply adamantine or indestructible, because that's what the weapon was. But the name Vajra kind of indicates a particular kind of indestructible weapon. So the shape of the tantric implement, Vajra, is a little bit reminiscent of that. And it represents, in Tantra, it represents an indestructible union of, let's say, on one level of, say, bodhicitta, method, and wisdom. Usually if we have some wisdom of emptiness, let's say, we're not thinking of the relative truth, and we're not, our compassion degenerates. If we develop compassion, we're kind of mushy, kind of idiot compassion, where our wisdom is gone. So the Vajra represents that on one level, even more sophisticated and subtle meanings of that union of method and wisdom. So here it says to be Vajra-like. The disciple has to be Vajra-like. So this means to make a relationship between the teacher and student close and stable, not to be split apart by anyone. So your parents, bad friends, demons, the like. Then the attitude which is like the earth. You should think of yourself as, with relationship to the guru, take on all the responsibility of the guru's activities and not to be dispirited by any of the responsibilities asked of you. Then the fourth, so those are three, and the fourth has some outlines. How to assume the responsibilities. This itself consists of 6 attitudes. So you could remember it said that these 9 could be condensed into 4. So it's like the attitude like a child, like a Vajra-like attitude, and earth-like attitude. And then fourth one is how to assume these responsibilities. This is divided up in 6. So the first 3 and 6 more make these 9 attitudes. What are they? What's the first one?
Like a foothill.
Foothills. What does that mean?
Suffering does not sway you.
So, yeah. So how did Geshe translate? Ordinary servant. Like an all-encompassing mountain. I'm not sure why they say foothills. It doesn't sound very... It's very strong. Geshe says all-encompassing mountain. This means that, you should be like the foothills. Don't be like the Himalayas. Just be like the foothills.
Of course, Americans.
This is the Santa Cruz way. So the first is called like a mind like an all-encompassing mountain. This means that just as a vast mountain is unshaken by the wind, the mind cannot be disturbed by any difficulties that may arise. That's useful, okay, to have, important. Second attitude, what is the second one? Like a servant. Okay, how does it say?
The worst tasks do not.
Ordinary, here is, Geshe translate, ordinary servant. Yeah? Although a servant must perform all kinds of lowly tasks, cleaning toilets and so forth, he's not bothered. Well, maybe some servants are not. In the same way, if your teacher needs something, you should be able to do it happily. Once you have this kind of joyful enthusiasm, everything you do has a religious attitude behind it. Third, mind like a janitor. How did they translate here? Like a sweeper. Okay. The Tibetan word chagdarwa means cleaner or sweeper. So they translated, yeah, you could say cleaner, sweeper. With this type of attitude, you completely let go of any pride or conceit.
You consider yourself lower than the
Definitely. Fourth, you should have a mind like a vehicle. How does it translate there? Foundation. Is that fourth? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's quite different than vehicle, right? This is an attitude that enthusiastically and joyfully takes on all the responsibility for completing work for the teacher, even when it is very difficult and seems like a heavy load. Fifth attitude, be like a dog, which means not to get angry even when your guru despises you, berates you, or just doesn't pay attention. You know, you expect the guru's going to pay attention to you, but like a dog. Do you have a dog like that? Lisa must have. Do you have a dog, Lisa?
No, there's a cat where I live. She needs attention.
That's cat's a little bit different. I think cat. Doesn't say to be disciples should be like a cat. Cats have that kind of self. Dog has a kind of attitude that if the dog is definitely your dog, right? Even you scold it, it still comes back asking for forgiveness and always no matter what happens. And the sixth attitude?
Like a ferry, a boat, I guess.
Like a boat. Let's say a ferry that crosses a big river does not get tired, bored, or upset, even though it must make the same crossing over and over again. What's the sense of that? Why not get bored? Well, the whole process of working for enlightenment takes a long time. If one doesn't have that kind of open-mindedness, you can easily get discouraged and get upset with a guru. So this is something worthwhile studying. So many of you have more than one text. Also, you might have the text, A Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand. Read these sections in detail, and then next time, if you have any questions about this, because we just mentioned the titles, there's commentary and more detail about all of that. Okay. Then, so this is the general indication of the attitudes needed to rely on the teacher. Now, in particular, training in faith, the root, or sometimes translated as root faith. Faith, which is the root. So it sounds like faith is the root of the path. Right? So going back again, remember, was it the devotion or the guru that's the root of the path? Yeah. Almost sounds like the devotion of which faith is a principal ingredient. So anyway, put that in your, what did Laurel and Hardy used to say?
Put it in your pipings.
Is that what they said? I thought he said something else. Put that in your hat and something. Okay. So training in faith. So of the practices to develop in terms of practicing guru devotion in thought, faith is one of them. What's the other one? In terms of the next outline, remembering the teacher's kindness and being respectful. So they say, I think in the Lama Chopa it says, developing faith by thinking of their qualities, developing respect by remembering their kindness. So two things that we try to develop, faith and respect. Are they the same? Faith and respect?
No.
What's the difference? Faith and respect. So they're are you in the same wavelength, Peter? Faith and respect?
Respect seems more like an attitude, and faith is quality of.
Well, these are talking about qualities of the disciples' mind. So faith that the by looking at the qualities, like say for instance, how do we have faith in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha as being qualified to protect us from suffering? That's one of the causes of refuge, isn't it? Faith. Maybe on a even lesser level, it's hope. Maybe you can't have faith at the beginning. Even some of the Lam Rim texts say, first to have hope. And sometimes I think it drives me, kind of surprised. I was thinking it drives me crazy. Sometimes when Tibetan Lamas come who aren't so even skilled in teaching Tibetans, let alone Westerners, and the first lecture they say, you have to have faith in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. They are the perfect refuge. How do you know? It could be, I mean, if you believe them because they're Tibetan Lama or Geshe, okay, that might help. But until you have some knowledge, it could be the same. Why not believe in Christ? Why not believe in Moses or Brahma or Krishna or something? Just because someone said that. So one of the causes of refuge is faith in the Triple Gem. How do you develop that faith? Through investigating their qualities. And those qualities only dawn upon you as you practice the path. At first you could be told about them, and if you believe those qualities, of course you could develop some faith, but we Westerners, we may not believe the qualities of the Buddha at first, right? Omniscient mind, infinite compassion. If someone is cutting his body from one side and applying sandalwood paste on the other, he feels equanimity toward both of them, What would we say? Would you believe that? If you were from New York, you wouldn't believe that at all, right? At least we Californians have something. So this is training in faith in the Guru. So it depends upon understanding their qualities. And some of those qualities are of the omniscient mind that we try to see the Guru as emanation of. So here there's a quotation from one of the texts. It says, faith is a prerequisite of all good qualities, a procreator of them like a mother, who then protects and increases them. It clears away doubts, frees you from the four rivers, and establishes you in the prosperous city of happiness and goodness. Faith cuts through gloom and clarifies the mind, and so forth. So this is talking about the benefits of faith in general.
So it says faith is the root of respect.
Where does it say that?
Maybe it says that on the thoughts, after faith cuts through gloom and clarifies the mind.
Uh-huh.
So
It eliminates pride and is the root of respect, right? So here, we're going to be talking about respect as another quality, but it sort of sees its root or foundation in having faith. You can't. Kind of hard to have respect without having some faith in the qualities of someone. Like say when we talk about our friends, having faith that they have qualities, of friendship, of love for us, concern for us. And then respect has to do, developed with what they actually have done. They've worked for our benefit. I really respect my dad or my mom because they stayed up late, they made me do my homework, or.
Venerable George, I think there's 3 types of faith as well.
Are there?
Clarifying faith,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't remember the other 2. It's on.
You should, Venerable, because you took the course in Mind and Mental Factors.
Oh, yeah.
Remember? In Mind and Mental Factors, there are 3 kinds of faith. Okay, so we're going to go over this quickly now. So next time I'm going to ask you about those 3 kinds of faith. They're mentioned here, aren't they? On these pages? Maybe not. Okay. Geshe Drondempa, who was Atisha's main disciple in Tibet, the great, his sort of like the ideal disciple. He said to Atisha, in Tibet there are many who are meditating and practicing, yet they are not attaining any special good qualities. Is that the case today, right? A lot of people do sadhanas, practice. How come? And the elder, that means Atisha, said, all the significant and insignificant, all the big and small good qualities that pertain to the Mahayana arise from relying on a guru. You Tibetans only think of gurus as being common persons. How could good qualities arise? It's interesting, huh? So again, when we think about it, if we want to succeed, if we want to generate good qualities, implication from the great gurus of the past who actually did this was to see their teachers as having good qualities, as having, to have faith in them. Then again, when someone asked the elder, Atisha, in a loud voice, this is another time, he kept on saying, Atisha, please give me an instruction. Kept on asking, as though Atisha looked like he ignored him, and the person said it louder, as though Atisha couldn't hear him. Then he said louder. He said, please give me a teaching. Please give instruction. And then finally Atisha says, ha ha. I'm not sure what this is. Hey, my hearing is very good, quiet down. For me to give personal instruction, you need faith. Faith. Thus, faith is very important. One of the Pension Lamas, if I remember correctly, I think it was one of the Pension Lamas, when one of his relatives was also, perhaps a reincarnate Lama or someone very, very able in the teachings, and they requested, after they'd grown up together and just thought of themselves as relatives for some time, as friends, he requested, I believe, the Pension Lama for some instruction. And the Pension Lama refused. And he said, well, why not? Why don't you give me instruction? You're a great teacher. And he said, because you just think of me as an ordinary being. There'd be no benefit. It's something to think about. We might think, we're just, with relationship to the spiritual guides, that's enough for us to receive their blessings just by their power. But there's something from our side. We need to be a suitable receptacle, suitable vessel, and part of that is having this kind of faith, developing faith in them. Otherwise, finally this relative did meditate on the possibility of seeing even someone who they grew up with, and they used to, they knew how they used to play tricks, and maybe they played marbles together, or whatever Tibetans did at that time, And they were able, in time, to meditate on them and to develop faith. Then they were accepted as a disciple. But there's no great purpose before that. So here, Venerable, at the bottom of the page 80. In general, faith is of many types. Well, here's related to that, and it's not faith in the three jewels, faith in karma and its effect, faith in the Four Noble Truths. Are those the three kinds of faith? No, those are just having different objects of faith. Here we're referring to faith in the guru. With regard to how the disciples should view their gurus, a particular tantra says, if you would ask, O Lord of Secrets, who's the Lord of Secrets? Vajrapani is one of the epithets of Vajrapani. Like when we say the mantra of Lama Khapa, Digme se we te chen chen rezi di me kempem, wampo jumpaya, dupung molu jam ze zang wei dag. Sang wei dak means the how's it translated here? Lord of secrets, or owner of the secrets, or the esoteric, the owner of the esoteric. If you would ask Vajrapani how disciples should view masters, then I would answer that they should view them as they view the Bhagavan. Who's the Bhagavan? Rajneesh? No, the Buddha. If the disciples view their masters in this way, they will always cultivate virtues. They will become Buddhas and benefit the entire world. In the Mahayana Sutras, as well as it is taught that you must think of the guru as being the teacher. It doesn't mean like, here it's capitalized, it doesn't mean like he is the big guy, the teacher. What does that mean? Do you know? The teacher, the Buddha, because it means the founder, the teacher. It doesn't mean like just a teacher or the big teacher or something like that. Pardon?
It's the big teacher.
The big teacher, all right. The texts on discipline, the Vinaya, state this as well, and the meaning of their statements is as follows. When you recognize someone to be a Buddha, you will not discern faults in that person, and you will pay attention to his or her good qualities. Likewise, completely cast aside your conception of faults in the Guru and train yourself to discern the Guru's good qualities. That is, do as it states in the Tantra called the Tantra bestowing initiation of Vajrapani. Keep the master's good qualities in mind. Never seize upon their faults. Keep their good qualities in mind. If you keeping their good qualities in mind, you will reach attainments. Seizing upon their faults, you will not. So, our teacher, our Guru Lama Zopa Rinpoche, perfect example of how to relate with the Gurus.
Yep.
If you see his own behavior, many of the teachers. So, whether Rinpoche has to practice that way, maybe he's already Buddha. Why is he? What does he have to do that for? Why is he lowering himself to others? For our sake, to see how to practice Guru devotion. So it's not just like you say, "Oh, look at him practicing Guru devotion." You say, "That's what I should be doing." You know what I mean? Your Guru might have good qualities for the most part and have only slight faults. If you examine your Guru for those faults, this will block your own attainments. So as I mentioned before, the Buddha said in Tantras and Sutras that in a degenerate time, the Buddhas definitely occur in the world. They definitely appear in the world. There are definitely Buddhas appearing as in the world today. Who are they? What's their main purpose? To lead people to realize the Dharma. So are they only going to be appearing as, maybe they appear as your next door neighbor, as sweepers, as the delicatessen operator? Definitely they could, right? Mm-hmm. But definitely, if they're going to appear as the delicatessen operator, for sure they're going to appear as gurus. Because it's through the Guru that we're actually led directly. Do this, do this. This is what the Buddha said. Delicatessen operator usually doesn't talk about those things with you, unless you go to a very special delicatessen. Right?
In New York.
In New York. Yeah,
There is no delicatessen in California, in
There's-
Northern California.
Really? There's no delis?
Not in Northern California.
Oh
like
my
New York.
gosh.
It's almost like, it's
I'm
almost
leaving.
worth leaving.
I'm leaving
I
tonight.
almost left because of it too.
No delis? I didn't know that.
No, not real.
How could I
delis.
have lived here this long?
You
You don't know.
I'm sorry to be the bearer of that.
Bad things. So whether you might teach, like for instance, Selingpa was a guru of Atisha, the guru of whom Atisha had the greatest reverence. Whatever his name was mentioned, he would fold his hands together at his heart and so forth. Yet Selingpa had a lesser.
7 minutes.
Oh, I thought that was 2. That's 7. That's 5 and 7. Okay. Selingpa had a lesser philosophical view. He actually was a practitioner and teacher of the Chittamatra view, whereas Atisha was already schooled in the Prasangika, the Madhyamaka, the Prasangika view of reality. Still, he considered Selingpa to be his guru. How does one understand that? Here it says, you might notice many faults in yourself, yet the perception of your good qualities is very strong. It overwhelms any perception of your faults. Thus, it is similar to the following example. The great elder held the Madhyamika view. That means Atisha held the Madhyamaka view. And Selingpa, his guru, held the view of the true aspectarian Chittamatrans. The people who did tenets know what the true aspectarian Chittamatrans are, right? Therefore, Atisha's view was superior to that of Selingpa. Still, Atisha upheld Selingpa as the guru who was unrivaled amongst his gurus because Atisha had obtained the spirit of enlightenment, mind of enlightenment, the bodhicitta instructions, and a general presentation of the stages of the Mahayana path independence upon him. Reflect on your guru's good qualities and do not look at their faults. Okay, so we'll talk more about that next time. And then the next section is remembering the teacher's kindness and being respectful. So, as I said, in the Lama Chopa, you can see how the verses, if you look at the small print, I think there's some translations of the small print, the notes in Lama Chopa, like in Martin Wilson's translation and some others. You can see where it says these verses, the Guru devotion is in thought, has mainly two outlines. Developing faith by remembering their qualities, and developing respect by remembering their kindness. So how are the gurus kind? Well, kind in, usually it says in the teachings, kind in three ways. You may know that from the Lama Chopa Puja and other things. Here it says, remembering the teacher's kindness and being respectful. There's a quotation from the 10 Teaching Sutra that says, develop the following ideas with respect to your teachers. I've wandered for a long time through cyclic existence, and they search for me. I've been asleep, having been obscured by delusions for a long time, and they wake me. They pull me out of the depths of the ocean of existence. I've entered a bad path, and they revealed a good path to me. They release me from being bound in the prison of existence. I've been worn out by illness for a long time, and they are my doctors. They are the rain clouds that put out my blazing fire of attachment. Lama Tsongkhapa says that these verses, the next verse also, you should meditate on fervently for some time. Usually it says, like, some of the verses that we recite, Lama Zopa Rinpoche often recommends calling the guru from afar. Have you seen his prayers? So similar kind of thing, to develop both faith and devotion, or respect for the guru, but particularly to have that kind of respect. So we'll talk more about that next time and how to rely in practice. Generally, we say the gurus are kind in three ways. Do you know what those three ways are?
Kindness and giving vows.
They're kind in the sutra sense. They're kind in giving us ordination, providing, because that's the basis for the path. Yeah.
Kindness and giving initiations.
Well, then you're mixing in the tantra. Say just from the sutra point of view. Vows, teachings, and material things. You say, well, my guru never gave me anything. Where did you get your RV from, Peter? So I worked for my RV, my recreational vehicle. It wasn't, was it Alan Wallace or my guru, Dalai Lama never gave me that. But in previous lives, how do we attain any kind of material this lifetime? Everything that we have, all our good qualities, you can trace back to karma that we created. Either instincts, so that we have good qualities in the mind, or things ripen on our existence, such as having wealth and having different kinds of opportunities like that. Possessions, all of that arises from karma we created having been guided by the gurus in past lifetimes. So even if they don't give you something physically immediately right now, as you start to see, this is the continuity of the universal guru that's been guiding me numberless lives. I remember when Lama Yeshe passed away and Lama Zopa was talking about the Lama's quality, saying, our guru who's been guiding us, so many eons, so kind. If you think of the guru that way, not just as their present manifestation, but as the continuity of the universal guru that's been guiding us, all of that, all of the material that we obtain is due to the kindness of the guru also. So they're kind in giving us, setting down both the scriptural and realizational doctrine, giving us vows, providing for for the pratimoksha vows, the bodhisattva vows, the tantric vows, giving us teachings, commentaries, and so forth, and for giving material things. So let's stop here and dedicate the merits that we have created. So recognize that we have created virtuous karma in making a positive motivation tonight, listening to the teachings, contemplating them with an open mind, non-partisan mind, with an intent to be able to help others. And in particular, dedicate the merits as one of the great dedications. Due to these merits, in all my lifetimes, may I never be separated from the holy gurus. And as always, try to seal that dedication in the emptiness of the three spheres. The merits, the goal dedicated to, and the act of dedication.